Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take the articles, research, and notes that you've shared with us, and we really try to pull out those critical nuggets of knowledge, to give you that essential shortcut to being truly well-informed. And this deep dive, it's custom tailored for you. Today, we're zeroing in on a type of choice that, well, it sort of defies logic. It resists those pro-con lists, and it's the kind that fundamentally changes your life once you finally face it. We're going to be dissecting a really fascinating concept pulled straight from the material you sent over. And it frames this whole idea so beautifully. It says, some choices wait patiently until you are ready to hear yourself. So our mission today isn't really to figure out how to be more productive with our decision-making. No, it's about discovering that profound, quiet clarity that comes only from patience, not from pressure, and definitely not from speed.
That's exactly right. We're sort of pushing back against this cultural idea that we have to solve everything immediately. I mean, most of the advice we get is about tactical decisions, right? Small choices, reversible choices, where speed is actually a good thing. But what happens when the choice isn't about gathering more data from the outside world? What if it's about recognizing a truth that's been, quietly living inside you for years?
And the sources we have, they frame this entire exploration around this one anecdote of a woman named Anvika and what they call the choice she kept postponing.
And what just stands out instantly is the central paradox of her whole situation. The sources are really clear on this. This was not a new problem. It had been, and I'm quoting here, quietly waiting in the background of Anvika's life for years. So it wasn't about solving some new issue. It was about finally accepting an old one.
That raises a huge question then. If the decision is already there and the facts haven't really changed for years, why the immense delay? Why do we spend so much mental and emotional energy either avoiding or rushing these critical choices that are, for all intents and purposes, ready to be made?
I think it suggests the barrier isn't a lack of information. It's the high emotional cost of actually doing it. We resist because we know deep down what that choice will ask of us. It might be a huge change, a sacrifice, or maybe just admitting an inconvenient truth about ourselves, our relationships, our careers. And the mind, spends years trying to protect us from that inconvenience.
Okay, let's unpack that resistance, because the early part of Anvika's story, it really reflects these two opposites and equally destructive strategies we use, rushing or avoidance. The sources mentioned she had done both. She had either rushed herself or avoided it altogether. And just think about that in your own life for a second. If you're listening, how often do you bounce between those two extremes? You either put it off completely and you just let that uncertainty kind of fester and grow in the background, or you try to just rip the Band-Aid off, force a snap decision just to get the problem off your mental plate.
And both of those strategies, they fail. They fail because they miss the one key requirement, which is internal processing. Avoidance doesn't make the decision go away. It just converts it into this constant low-level cognitive load. And that weight is exhausting. It shows up as mental fatigue, distraction, forgetfulness, maybe general irritability. It's the silent anxiety of having an unmade critical decision just running in the background of your mind like a memory leak in your computer's operating system. Rushing, on the other hand, is usually just a desperate attempt to end that chronic anxiety. But a rushed decision is so often misaligned. It's because you haven't given your deeper self the time it needs to really process the implications. You haven't truly calculated the internal cost.
Well, wait a minute. We need to pause here because if we're suggesting people should wait and reflect, how is that different from just, regular old procrastination? Aren't we just giving people a license to avoid the problem even longer by calling it patience?
That really hits the nail on the head, because the difference is absolutely critical. Procrastination is passive, it's distraction, it's avoidance, it's hoping the problem will somehow solve itself. But patience in this context is active, it's a verb. Anvika's turning point, the really critical moment, was when she pivoted away from those passive strategies. The sources say, this time she didn't. She listened, she reflected, she allowed herself the time to be honest.
That distinction, active listening versus passive waiting, that feels like the core insight here. If you're struggling with a complex choice, our instinct is to think we need more external data. Read 5 more books, talk to 3 more people, make a pro-con list that's 3 pages long.
Exactly. But the sources suggest that if a choice has been waiting for years, the information you need isn't external at all. It's just a resistance to being honest with yourself. True patience means actively creating the space for that internal truth to kind of rise to the surface and be seen, even if it's inconvenient. It's giving your own deep wisdom a chance to be heard over all the noise of your fear.
Okay, so if that active listening is the prerequisite, let's turn to what happens next. Let's focus on the insights that come from that shift. The source material gives us three pretty powerful lessons here. And the first one feels foundational, that timing matters more than speed.
This is such a critical distinction, and it's one that modern culture often gets wrong. Speed is just a metric of efficiency. How fast can you get it done? But timing is about readiness. It's about context. It's systemic. You might be able to build the walls of a house really quickly, but if you rush the foundation, if you don't let the concrete cure properly, the whole structure will fail later on. The speed was efficient, sure, but the timing was a disaster.
Right. It's the difference between doing something efficiently versus doing something effectively. I like the analogy of waiting for fruit to ripen. It really applies here. You can't speed up an avocado by, I don't know, squeezing it harder. If you cut it too soon, it's just hard and flavorless and useless. But if you wait until the right time, when it's internally ready, the result is exactly what you need. And when we apply that to life choices, like, say, quitting a high-stress job, speed might mean quitting tomorrow morning with no plan, just to end the pain. But timing involves the patience to maybe use those last 3 months of work to build up savings, to network, to establish the emotional readiness you need to transition successfully. Timing ensures the decision actually has the best chance to flourish because all the internal conditions, your readiness, are finally met.
Which leads us so naturally into the second big lesson here, that clarity comes from patience.
Hmm.
I think people often mistake patience for just doing nothing, for inertia or paralysis. But here, patience is profoundly active reflection. It's creating the mental space for this huge, complex data set, which is your own lived experience, and allowing it to synthesize all your conflicting values.
It almost sounds like patience is the operating system upgrade you need to run the new program. You can't force the choice, but you can force yourself to just sit with the complexity until the conflicting ideas start to settle.
Absolutely. Think about that feeling of being overwhelmed. That feeling is usually just a lack of clarity, right? Caused by too much noise, too many competing internal voices. The voice of fear, the voice of obligation, the voice of what you think you should want. When we just stop pressing the panic button and we give ourselves the time needed for that internal complexity to settle down, the noise subsides. And that quiet, consistent truth is finally audible, the patience, the clarity mechanism. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, it's probably not because you need more options or more data. It's because you haven't truly sat with the emotional costs of the options you already have. Patience forces that reconciliation.
And this transition, it brings us to the third lesson, which for me is the real aha moment here for you, the listener. The source material really emphasizes that right decisions feel steady, not loud. And that just flips the script on how we're taught to think about major life choices. I mean, we're so conditioned by movies, by culture, to expect these life-altering decisions to be dramatic. We're waiting for the lightning flash, the booming soundtrack, the sudden tearful confrontation where everything changes in a movie
A
montage.
eureka moment, we expect that. But Anvika's resolution, it was described very precisely. It says when she finally chose, it didn't feel dramatic. It felt calm,
Yeah.
steady. Right.
Oh, yeah.
That absence of drama is actually a sign of deep internal alignment. If the decision has been quietly waiting for years, when you finally choose it correctly, you're not fighting reality anymore. And crucially, you are no longer fighting yourself. The drama is just the sound of internal resistance. And when that resistance dissolves, the clarity that's left just feels calm and steady and certain.
That quiet certainty is the crucial gauge. And we have to be careful not to confuse, say, a feeling of excitement, which can be loud, with a feeling of drama or frenzy. A right decision might still bring excitement for sure, but it won't bring that turmoil or that need for intense self-justification. So if you're grappling with a choice right now and you're feeling massive emotional turmoil around it, maybe that drama is a sign that the choice isn't ready or that you're still resisting the truth of the decision itself. If you feel like you have to constantly justify your choice to yourself or to other people, that compulsion suggests you don't have that internal steadiness that defines a truly right decision.
And it's really important to look at the consequences the source described. The story doesn't just end with Anvika making the choice. It focuses on the outcome. With that choice made, her life began opening into something larger. That expansive outcome, that's the ultimate result of alignment. When a decision is made from that place of steady truth, it unlocks momentum. Because you've removed this long-standing source of internal friction. She wasn't fighting the choice anymore, so the path forward didn't feel like a struggle.
That's a great point. If the decision had been forced or rushed, that anxiety wouldn't just disappear. It would have just transferred to the next phase, right? and it would have made the new path feel restrictive or stressful or just full of obstacles. But because this choice felt calm and steady, the path that followed felt expansive. It's a powerful idea. When we finally listen to ourselves and allow the necessary timing, we step onto a path that naturally accommodates our growth, not one that feels like we're fighting against ourselves every single step of the way. The drama is gone, and the freedom can begin.
And this, I think, is the practical core of this whole deep dive for you, the learner. If you are struggling with a complex decision, a career pivot, a relationship, a big financial commitment that feels like it has been quietly waiting for years, you have to seriously consider the approach that Anvika took.
Right. Your current method, whether you're rushing to a conclusion or you're perpetually avoiding the issue, that method is likely the barrier to clarity. The practical application here isn't to find a new pro-con list template. It's about stopping the active effort to force an answer.
Exactly. Create the space for honesty. Allow yourself the time for that internal synthesis, for your conflicting ideas to finally settle. The goal is to transform that agonizing, postponed conflict into a calm, steady truth. So when the decision finally arrives, it shouldn't shock you. It should feel, well, naturally, right? Steady, inevitable even. It's not so much a change of mind as it is a recognition of a truth.
Yeah. It really is the difference between making a choice you have to mentally fight for and justify constantly, and realizing a truth that you simply recognize as a fact. So, to quickly reiterate the central takeaway from this entire deep dive, true clarity in those crucial life decisions, it often requires patience. That is, the active reflection needed to transform a long-postponed internal conflict into a quiet, steady resolution.
And to leave you with a final provocative thought, something to maybe observe in your own life this week. If the truly right decisions always feel calm and steady, as the sources strongly suggest, what does the intense internal drama surrounding a difficult choice you're facing right now tell you? Is the choice itself fundamentally wrong? Or are you just resisting the clarity that patience would naturally bring? So maybe focus less on the outcome for a bit and start paying attention to the feeling the decision generates inside you. That steady feeling, that's the guidepost you've been waiting for.